Thanks for the introduction to Dorsey, and good morning from Jefferson City to everyone. I'd like to thank Mr. Greg Thompson for his very kind comments this morning as well. I appreciate the invitation to be part of your annual meeting, and I'm sorry we couldn't gather in person, but let's hope that the current situation gets better in the near future. I especially like the theme of this year's meeting, our communities, our installation, our future, because it reflects a reality I want to talk about today. A prosperous and strong future for your communities is tied closely to the future of Fort Leonard Wood. And the future of Fort Leonard Wood, in many ways, is dependent on the environment you build to support its operations. Put simply, your efforts to support the fort are efforts to support your own communities. And that brings me to what I want to talk about today. I'll be happy to answer your questions at the end if you have them. And this would not be an appropriate meeting without there being at least some slides to show. So I'm going to make sure that we don't miss that opportunity today. So please go to the first slide. So what I want to talk about today is pretty straightforward. I wanted to make sure that the continued presence of military and defense in Missouri is something that we underscore. That it's something that builds a better place for all of us here in Missouri. I want to talk about the statewide game plan that we have to achieve and retain and grow that sector. I want to talk about quality of life and opportunity for service members and families, some key state priorities that we have for FY22 and beyond, a bit about our partnership efforts with SOP, some cautions about the future because some dark clouds are out there on the horizon, and a few changes ahead that really kind of impact me and folks who care about the Office of the Military Advocate. Please go to the first slide if you would. So one of the things that I keep pointing out when I have an opportunity to talk to groups like SOP around the state is we truly are a military and defense state. Some of you have seen this map a number of times before, but it's really important that we continue to underscore for our policy leaders here in Missouri, that's the governor, lieutenant governor, and others on a statewide basis, our General Assembly and others who support them, that really we have military and defense presence and efforts and importance on a statewide basis. The map is a good visual cue as to the fact that we have this really in every part of the state. Go to the next slide, please. So let me talk just a little bit about the importance of military and defense in Missouri. So these are some updated figures, by the way, and you may not have seen these in the past. Our military, of course, strengthens our communities and state in many ways. They make our communities better places to live. They're our neighbors. We all know that very well, but they also provide economic support and jobs, which is a key. Missouri is number 12 nationally in total defense spending, number 12 as a percentage of the size of our economy or the gross domestic product, and number 9 in defense contract spending. All those are very, very interesting and I think very impactful kinds of comparisons on a nationwide basis. A little bit over $29 billion in economic impact, or about 9% of our total economy in Missouri, and supports about 180,000 jobs, or 7% of Missouri's workforce. Those are astounding figures, and sometimes people have a hard time kind of wrapping their arms around the impact. But the bottom line is we're heavily dependent on our partnership with the military and what it does for us here in Missouri. We have about 42,000 total defense and military personnel serving our state. Most of those are in uniform, and about $13 billion in the prime defense contracts that support just a little bit over 83,000 jobs. We know about Boeing in St. Louis, but we also know that we have those efforts scattered all over the state of Missouri and just about every corner of our state. Fort Leonard Wood contributes about $2.2 billion to the state's economy and is responsible for about 21,000 jobs in Missouri. As has been stated in the past, if Fort Leonard Wood were one employer, and it's not, there's a collection of employers on the installation, it would be one of the largest single employers in our state, possibly rivaled on the private sector side by only Boeing in St. Louis. Go to the next slide, please. So in order to work on supporting our military and defense sector, we have to have a state strategic plan. You might want to call it a game plan that was adopted by our Missouri Military Preparedness and Enhancement Commission, or MPEC. And just like the Sustainable Ozarks Partnership has a plan, we work on that plan at the state level to achieve various kinds of outcomes. MPEC has been wonderful to put that plan in place and to shape it over the course of time. I don't expect you to remember all of what this plan embodies, but it has three main goals. The first of which is to retain and grow our installations. The second is to pay attention to service members and families. And the third is to work to support our defense businesses in the state. We have various strategies that are connected to each one of those, and we are working on those at the state level and in partnership around the state of Missouri. We are continuing to shape and execute that plan. And at the end of 2022, I trust that there will be another plan to follow it up. Go to the next slide, please. One of the most important parts of that plan is to make Missouri the most supportive place in the country for those in uniform and their families. I think it is goes without saying that at the national level, it is a major administration policy, and also obviously a DOD and Army priority that service member and family quality of life is at the top of the list. It is prioritized. We hear about it all the time when we go to Washington. And here in Missouri, in response, we need to continue and ramp up our efforts, both at the state level and communities. I'm heartened to know and very much in awe about the great efforts that SOP has put in place over the past year related to just that factor. And you've drilled down into many important pieces of that quality of life puzzle. And we think there are really about four kind of key efforts that the federal government expects us to work on. One is easier and better coordinated access to information, opportunities, and support. Sometimes we just don't do a very good job here in Missouri of actually providing easy access to all the great benefits and all the great opportunities and support that we have put forward. We know that support for high quality housing and childcare is an important issue. The state has a role, I think, in high quality housing and in childcare, and we look forward to figuring out exactly how we can be supportive at Fort Leonard Wood going forward. And we need to make sure that we have the most welcoming environment possible, particularly in having what are sometimes difficult conversations about diversity and inclusion. We have a military that very much looks like our country. And as a result, we may have some people who come to our installations who might not feel as much at home in the communities as they might in their home communities. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us over time to make sure that we are the most welcoming place possible. And then finally, simpler ways to connect transitioning service members and spouses with jobs. Dorsey indicated a few minutes ago some major efforts at SOP. We need to do so on a statewide basis because we know that one of the best ways to keep service members and families in our state after they leave the military is to help them get connected to job and or training and education benefits here in the state. So those are some of the issues that we think are high priorities, and we're going to be doing something about them. Go to the next slide, please. Wanted to make sure that you are aware of some policy change efforts that we have in place that are at the top of the list in terms of priorities for 2021 and 2022 related to quality of life. As you know, Governor Parson has let us know he wants Missouri to be the most military and veteran-friendly state in the country. As you heard from him earlier, he's very proud of his military service. He understands what it's like to serve, and he understands the pressures and the difficulties involved in locating and relocating as transfers happen from state to state. And as a result, we need to make sure that we're the most friendly place in the nation. And to that end, we're working on 5 priority areas that I want to let you know about. One is to as I related earlier, provide new ways to access military and veteran information. All state benefits programs, state and regional amenities, know something about Missouri, and a cooperative marketing campaign on a statewide basis to provide that information. That's really kind of a tall order because there's a lot of information and there are a lot of programs, but unfortunately, we don't do a very good job of getting that information out to the people who can use it best. Secondly, a better and easier method for connecting transitioning service members and spouses and current veterans to jobs, training, and education. We're working on a location, a website that I hope will be announced very soon that will make it easier for that to happen and will make it easier for companies, employers to make job openings known directly to those who would like to consider staying in our state. Uniform standards for higher education credits that are awarded for military service at Missouri's higher education institutions. Right now, it's kind of the wild west, if you will, across the Missouri in terms of what kind of credit will be given for military service, professional military education, and experience gained in the military. We're working very hard with sources at the state level, leaders around the state of Missouri to make that happen. And I have confidence over the next couple of months that will be put in place. We also need to continue to collaborate with education leaders and others to support high quality elementary and secondary education. You in the Sustainable Ozarks Partnership region are very lucky to have some excellent schools led by the Waynesville R6 School District and Dr. Brian Henry and his team, really providing world-class elementary and secondary education. We need to make sure that all military-connected children in Missouri have access to that same level of quality because it makes our state more attractive and it grows a set of people who are willing to take on the responsibility of being in the military in the future. And then finally, as I related just a few minutes ago, really engage in some diversity and inclusion discussions that will make sure that our communities are the best and most welcoming places possible. Go to the next slide, if you would. So a bit about our partnership with the Sustainable Ozarks Partnership. As Dorsey and team knows, we have lots of day-to-day interactions, lots of contact with Fort Leonard Wood on issues that arise. That's one of the most pleasurable things about what I do is the ability on a day-to-day basis to interact and to respond to issues that arise, opportunities that arise. Sometimes there are problems that we need to solve. We are supportive of SOP's offensive strategy for retaining and growing missions on the installation. Dorsey did a great job in the annual meeting report a few minutes ago of talking about exactly what that entails. We agree. We are complete partners in those efforts. And they do parallel our efforts in Washington with the congressional delegation, using our consultants in helping to make sure that your strategy is also reflected on a statewide basis. We do lots of coordinating with our congressional delegation. It is something that happens literally on a day-to-day basis from statewide interest to Fort Leonard Wood. We have a great congressional delegation. You heard from them earlier. Plus Congressman Sam Graves from the northwest corner of the state, all parts of military and military-related committees. And we think that that is just a tremendously good effort. We're all about building visibility and credibility, again, as Dorsey indicated earlier, in the Pentagon and elsewhere. If they don't know where we are and they don't keep hearing from us, then in fact, they'll forget about us when opportunities arise. We need to make sure that we stay abreast of national best practices. It's one of the reasons why I've wanted to stay active in the Association of Defense Communities. SOP is very active, and we want to make sure that we continue to learn from others around the country as to how they do their jobs well. Governor Mike Parson, other statewide elected officials, the General Assembly, we make sure that we keep them aware and keep them pointed in the direction of being supportive of what happens at Fort Leonard Wood and in the region and the other military and defense efforts that we have going on around the state. Governor Parson and Lieutenant Governor in particular as a team have been very supportive. and I can't thank them enough for all the time and effort and heartfelt dedication to the effort that they put in place. Service member and family quality of life, again, as reflected in the SOP plan, especially transition assistance and employment, will continue to be important going forward. And then one finally that I want to talk about that is something that's a long-term interest of mine, which is the University of Missouri Tech Park on Fort Leonard Wood. Many of you know that that tech park for a long time was a key part of supporting the installation and its mission. And unfortunately, over time, it probably fell off the University of Missouri's radar screen. I'm happy that Laclede Electric Cooperative is picking up the gauntlet there and is working in the direction of standing up what is truly a great innovation center concept for the tech park. I'll let those events develop in the future, but I wanted to make sure to underscore the importance of that unique facility on the installation. Many people don't know it, but it was the first enhanced use lease across the Army, all across the United States and around the world. The first time an enhanced use lease was put in place to locate such a facility. Go to the next slide. I've talked about the great things that we have going, the fact that we have a good plan in place. We have a good coordinated effort together. I want to kind of underscore the fact that there are some dark clouds on the horizon. Not everything is rosy. We've had just a wonderful relationship, particularly in Washington, that's helped Fort Leonard Wood and the region. But the election in 2022 will mean some of our key champions in Congress will leave their positions. Senator Blunt, of course, will be leaving at the end of next year. Congresswoman Hartzler will be leaving at the end of the next year. We don't know what elections hold for new people in office, and we hope that there are some good experienced people who are elected. But the political environment really does underscore the need for continued strong advocacy for Fort Leonard Wood and Missouri's military sector on a statewide basis. We will have great supporters in Washington, but the environment is going to be a little tougher for us. We need to make sure that we put in place some additional alliances, and building those relationships, I think, is extremely important going forward. There's also a gridlock in Congress that means there will be likely no DoD appropriation and possibly no national defense authorization before the end of 2021 or later. Most of you know that the federal fiscal year starts on the 1st of October, and it will start without an appropriation for our military. And that continuing resolution that will be put in place, perhaps many of them, is not something that's very conducive to building on plans to support, maintain, and look for new missions at Fort Leonard Wood. And then finally, the administration in Washington is likely, from most observers' point of view, to recommend cuts in Army end strength for fiscal 23 and beyond. That will be the next year's budget beyond what's being worked on now. That's not certain, of course, but all of us need to be working in concert to make sure that we can counter that. Go to the next slide. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about this, and Mr. Greg Thompson mentioned this earlier. I've elected to retire from the Office of the Military Advocate effective the 1st of September of 2021. It's something that my wife and I have been working on for a long time. She retired after 37 years of work with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs back in January, and I can tell you that she's been urging me to consider this for quite a long time. The position is a governor appointment, serves a 6-year term in office with the Missouri Senate confirmation. And there's a search underway with a August 27 suspense for applications. I'm happy to report, as Chair Steve Earhart, who's on the line, knows, the Missouri Military Preparedness Enhancement Commissioner, IMPACT, is involved in that vetting process, really for the first time ever, plowing new ground, being able to advise the governor as to the proper person to put in that job. I know there's a desire to have a new person on board within the next 60 days or so, and I stand ready to be cooperative in that transition process. Go to the next slide, if you would. want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be with you. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier in the presentation. I know we're all doing something a little bit different here with regard to the virtual nature of what we do. It's been a great pleasure working with Sustainable Ozarks Partnership, with the civic, business, and community leaders who make up the partnership, with Dorsey Newcomb, Don Payne, and the whole team. You all do a wonderful job. It's a great personal pleasure to work with professionals and folks who do work that's worthwhile. I look forward to hearing lots more about what you're doing in the future, and hope to be in some way supportive of what you're doing. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have based on what I've said. Thanks very much.